Okay, thanks. So we are actually going to talk about those dashboards, which actually made me change my mind about people analytics a couple of years ago, because when I kind of started at Spotify, my manager asked me to get some metrics up on the wall, which was just, he wanted to have like some hiring metrics on the wall, on screens, so we could see what progress we made with the hiring. And that was the start of a journey, much larger journey, that turned around my view on people analytics. Clickbait. I'm going to tell you how that happened later. But before I'm going to talk about that, we are going to redefine the topic. So as the previous speaker said, HR dashboard isn't a goal in itself. It's about impact. We want to make an impact on the business. So that's what we're going to talk about. But I think we are going to talk about that from a bit different perspective than we've done before. So I'm Henrik. I'm partner and HR analyst at a talent company. We are consultants within talent management, and people analytics is my area of responsibility there. And prior to that, I was 3 years at Spotify, part of building people analytics there. So this is something that we can achieve if we start working with HR dashboards. And this is something that we also need to achieve if we want to have a successful company or a successful HR department. So I'm going to talk about how we can build the data culture by using dashboards. And I'm also going to talk about that we actually need a data culture if we are going to work with dashboards. Because otherwise we can skip the whole thing. And I mean, we're in HR, so we all love culture, right? But the thing here is that it's our own culture that we might need to change, and not the other one's culture. It's about how we work with data that we might need to change if we want to use HR dashboards and be successful. So what happened? The thing that changed my mind was that I believe that people analytics or HR and data is about the same thing as running. The winner is the one that keeps an even pace. If you run a relay race, for example, stafette in Swedish, if you have 4 persons on the team, 3 are very slow, it doesn't matter if you have a 4th one that's a pro on running. Because you will never win if those 3 other ones aren't fast as well. And it's so much about that. What we want to achieve, what we believe in, is that we want everyone in HR to be able to take data-driven decisions. Because if you have 100 people in your HR department that takes decisions on a daily basis, you want all of those decisions to be based on data. A center of expertise with a people analytics team, it's perfect. It's really good, and you can get overarching insights. You have someone that can work on the company, big related stuff, and have those resources. But what you also want is that you want to have your team in HR to base their daily decisions on data. And I mean, we have some assumptions. We want to have many data points. We don't want to have like one gut-based data point. We want to work with the right populations. We don't want to ask HR about how onboarding is going. We want to talk with those that were onboarded. And we want, as we have said before, we want to connect the dots. We want to paint the picture with many colors to get a better view of the reality. And I think, I mean, we've all seen the Berson's Berson model, and predictive analytics is cool, and it's one of those things that we should aim for, but the best data is the one that we actually use. It's as simple as that. So what we strongly believe in is that the person that's within the right context is the one that should have access to the data and make the right decisions based on that context. Everyone in HR should be an analyst in some way, because we're all working with different related parts of the HR process where we should have the data and base our assumptions on that data. I made my talk for the other room, so this is not going to be very technical. But I mean, we need to know what we're talking about when we're talking about dashboards. We are in a place when even our coffee machine has a dashboard, so we need to agree on what is a dashboard before we talk about dashboards. And if we're going to succeed in taking relevant business decisions by having dashboards, we need to know what we are going to work, what we're going to purchase or have demands about. So, very easy. We have an HR system. We have data there. We might have a reporting module in the HR system. We might have all our data in the HR system. And then we're fine. Then we're there. Then we can just start working. But that's probably not the case. You might want to add something to the HR system so you can get the data out on a daily basis without being a reporting pro. You might want to visualize the data from the HR system in a way that everyone understands. So you go from Excel exports to visualizing the data, so it's easy access for everyone. So we enable everyone in HR to take part of the data that they are supposed to work with. So visualize real time, what's the trends. We want to connect the data as well as we've also been talking about before. We want to be able to look at the data from a large number of sources. In this case, I only have 2, but it's enough for an example. Say, for example, that we have a leaver. We want to look at those that are leaving early, before 6 months in the deployment. We have the leaving date in the HR system, but we might want to look at the ATS on the recruitment process and see what happened in the recruitment process that makes our new hire to leave so early, for example. It could be that we want to look in the referral system. It can be that we want to look somewhere else, but we want to connect the dots to paint the full picture. We also will get by having some kind of solution like this instead of a guy or girl pulling reports manually. We want to have consistent data. Every time we get the data, we want it to look the same way, basically. We also want something in our dashboard, and that's support the analysis. I mean, showing data isn't enough. As we talked about, we want something more because we're in a position where we can demand it. In an HR dashboard, that could be, for example, that when we are looking at trends, we would like to know what's within the margin of error. If we have an engagement score that goes down from 85 to 80%, is it within the margin of error? Is it actually a decrease, or is it just as it is? It might be that when we look at the exit survey and see that we have 60% response rate in the exit survey, is that only an indication of what our exit process looks like, or is it something that we can rely on when we talk about the exit process? So these are very easy things that a dashboard could automate insight for you. We want our dashboard to show actionable data. When we look at leavers, we want to know not only how many are leaving, but we want to know why are they leaving. So we might want to connect to our service system as well to catch the data from the exit survey. And let me see. And we might also want something in between. It could be a data prep tool. It could be some kind of data warehouse. We are moving towards a place where we are integrating specialized systems rather than having one system that's good at maybe having everything but not really specialized in anything. And we want to own our data since data is money. I'm not going to go into the technical specifics of this one, but so you can build a dashboard by integrating directly to one dashboard system, or you can have some place in between. But you might want to use some kind of data warehouse or something due to, say, for example, GDPR regulations that need you to remove personal identifiers and those things. So basically, if you're going to purchase a dashboard or start working with the dashboard, building a culture around data, you might want to have this tool that actually helps you with this. You want something that's self-service interface for extracting, connecting, presenting consistent and actionable data in real time that support the analysis and should be tailored for your organization. So it's something that you actually can work on. So you're not just able to buy it, and you also want to do something with it. So that's what we're going to talk about when we are talking about dashboards. I'm going to touch briefly upon how you can. There are basically two ways when it comes to dashboards, and one is to buy one. you can buy something from Visir, you can buy something from other dashboard suppliers or system suppliers that have pre-made dashboards. It's plug and play, you do an integration, it's easy, everything is kind of set up, they have metrics for you. That's where it might be dangerous, since those metrics are their metrics that they usually use, maybe not based on your HR strategy, which your people analytics strategy should be. They have the customer support, they are a third party. Might be that you can add data that you wouldn't otherwise get, say from your engagement survey provider. They might be able to export data to a third party provider as well, even if they won't send it to you. And they might have external data, they might have benchmark data, but be very careful with that, because of your company isn't the same as other companies. I've been working in the employee engagement industry, and benchmark is so. There are so many horrible discussions around benchmark where people take so many wrong decisions, so be very careful with that. So that's the pros with buying one. Then we also have the data devil that asks, can you really trust them if you buy something? You still need to be there to secure the quality in what they are doing, because you are going to base your business decisions on it. So you want to make sure that it's the correct data that's visualized. You need to know that it actually fits your context before you buy something. And also, if you are starting to establish a culture within your data team, or within your HR team where you look at data, you also need to make sure that it's prepared for the next step. It might be that you can start with fixed dashboard, because you need everyone to know, yes, the current state. But when people want to dig into stuff, you need to have it prepared for that as well. The other option when getting a dashboard is to do it yourself. It's probably some kind of business intelligence tool. And the pros here is that you will get it your own way. You don't have to get another system. You will get the managers or HR to the system where they hopefully already are working. You will be able to connect with your internal data. It might not be that you want to send your financial data to a vendor, for example. You own the data for real, since you have it in your system. I mean, every time you sign an agreement, you probably sign that you own the data, but once you're going to switch a supplier, it might not always be the case that you can get the data that you own. So that's a pro with having data yourself. It's a tool for everyone, meaning that everyone in HR, your HR managers that will need to access some data, more like pre-made dashboards, they can access it, but your people analytics team will probably be able to use it as well, since if you have a business intelligence tool, it's both for advanced analytics, but also for just having those figures on the wall. And it will be adaptable long term. When you change your organization, or if you change your metrics, or if you change your whatnot priorities, you will be able to do that. But you have the data demon as well that says that you need to know what you're doing, because there is no second line support, because that's you, basically. So if you set something up, it's up to you. You also need to realize that you need to have the resources. You can use, maybe find some developer at your company that can do it for you, but you need to have someone that can maintain the solutions for you as well. And it's a lot of maintenance when you have integrations, when things are changing. So you need to be prepared for that if you're going to build something on your own. So we have talked about kind of what is a dashboard and how can we get one. Now we're coming to the culture part. How do we make it fly? And if you're going to stick with running, it's kind of like you buy a new pair of fancy running shoes. They won't take you out for a jog, basically. You need to go out for the jog yourself. And you need to do this week and the next week and the following week if you want to run a marathon. You need, in order to, as I said in the beginning, to build or to being successful with implementing dashboards and enabling your HR team, you need also to build a culture around the data. And the thing is, some people like data, but the others don't. So you need to help them. You can help them by having frameworks for decision making. Sorry, I just tried to see the time. There it is. Okay. So at Spotify, for example, we had a framework that was called DIBS. You always needed to start in the data. From the data, you formed insights, which you then formed to your belief. and the belief was something that you turned into a better project. So you always started in the data when you wanted to do something. So when someone in your HR team comes to you and say, hey, I want to start this project, then the first question should be, what does the data show you? And the data should be data from your systems and not data from YouTube, for example. You also need to start thinking about how to think slow. So this is my favorite book. It's Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He's a Nobel Prize winner in economics. And he's written a 1,000-page book about how our brain works, how decision-making happens. And the thing there is that he talks about that we have two systems. We have a fast system, which is the Autopilot, and we have a slow system, which is kind of the Analyst. So the Autopilot answers all questions, and the Analyst is more like the control questions where we make conscious decisions. And the thing is that this is a very good system. That's how our brains are designed to save energy. So the Autopilot manages everything until we need to do something really tricky, and then that's when the Analyst wakes up. And that's fine, but the thing is that this Autopilot is a crazy guy. He's not interested in giving the correct answer. He's interested in giving one answer. So when you get the question, why is the attrition 5%? Your answer will probably be like, it's because of that we had blah, 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 blah. What you don't think of is if the attrition was 5%. So in order to start thinking and working with data, you need to start using your slow system. You need to find those situations where you can use that system. And it's about not being stressed. It's about having slept. It's about having eaten. It's about having time for answering questions. Because it doesn't matter how good dashboard you have built, if you have the data before you, but not are thinking about it. You need to add a thought to the data. You need to take the time. And I can see that some of you are smiling because time is not something that we have much of in HR, but it's something that we need to create if we are going to work and start building a data-driven culture. We need to get time to look at data. It will save us time long term. It will save us money long term by taking the time today. It's so important to not taking things on volley. It won't help anyone. So how do we support this change? Well, the carrot in this case, we like to work with carrots and not a whip. It's very abstract. So we ask everyone in your team to step out of your comfort zone, do something that you don't want to, do something that you don't understand, do something that you don't like, please, because it will improve the bottom line. And it probably won't work. I haven't seen it work. So there are some things that you can and need to do to support this change if you want to build this culture, if you want to use the data that you actually are pulling from your systems. And trust is the first one. Trust in the data. If you're going to work with the data, you need to trust the data. We talked about data quality, so we need to be certain that it's an okay data. We need to kind of understand how the calculations works. But the more important, we need to talk about how we're going to use the data. To what level do we need to trust it? I mean, when we do analysis on like company level, we're painting with the big picture, so we don't need to have everything correct into detail. We also need to work with trust from the perspective that we need to build trust around the process. So when I was at Spotify and built the dashboard there, I spent 1 hour in one-on-ones with each member in the talent acquisition team before we implemented the dashboard. Once we were going to launch it, I spent one hour in one-on-ones with all members on the team in trainings to train them according to their specific needs. We follow up with like half an hour with every single member to anchor and train, anchor and train, anchor and train. So important, because you need to be confident in what you are doing. Which is also about the next step. It's a very concrete thing, but when you're asking your team to start working with this data that they get in their need, they need to understand how they're going to work with it. The data itself might be obvious, but how are they supposed to work with it together with the stakeholders? So provide templates and also use those informal leaders or the early adopters when it comes to data. So those that don't feel that confident in working with this kind of solutions or using data when they are talking about the processes, make them team up with someone that's comfortable who can join them in their first meetings, so we get everyone up and running. And then track usage. You need to know who's using it and who's not using it, and that's, you know that because it's a system. You can see who's logged in, and it's not because that you're supposed to point someone out, but you need to know which persons that you're going to ask about how it's going. You can just ask the question, hey, how is it going for you? And they will probably tell you that they have some kind of challenge or don't know, and then you can start from there. And that's also about trust. And then we have the data quality thing. I mean, that's one part of the dashboard as well. If you present all data on everything you have, you can present the data quality as well. That can help everyone to feel secure about what they are showing. This is 95% correct. You can rely on it because we have double-checked it in advance. You don't need to do it now. You can rely on what we have been doing. And last but not least, you need to use the data for yourself, because if you don't, no one else will. If you as a stakeholder check in on the data, ask questions about it, then your team will do that as well. If you don't, no one will care, except for those that we had here who said that like data. The other ones won't care. So, some short learnings about how to make an impact with dashboards. It's about that the winner keeps an even pace. You need to level up the whole team. Everyone is making decisions every day, and you need those decisions to be based on data. And then you can work with the center of expertise as well. That's two different things. But we also want our full HR team to work based on data. You need to know what you want to achieve. Of course, in this case, if you want to build some kind of dashboard solution, or if you want to implement it, you need to know what is this kind of solution supposed to be. Is it just getting some metrics up on the wall, or are we actually going to get something out of it? You want to connect the dots. I mean, you can say that you do people analytics based on your employee survey, but that's not really the case. You want to be able to paint a picture during the full employee life cycle on what's happening with our employees in different kind. You want to see it. We want to connect all the systems to get as correct picture as possible. And you want to nurture the data culture that we talked about. You don't just want to provide the data, you actually want people to be able to work with the data that they get. And you want people to work with the data in a correct way, because if you are spending lots of money in getting this dashboard, you don't want to have some kind of mind error back the first thing that happens. You want to have good and correct conclusions instead. Because of everyone in the team will be able to do that, because they have the context. So we need to trust people, trust everything. That was it. Good. Thank you.